It is our pleasure this morning to welcome Julie Boggess.
This is so weird.
So whether you're online or in person, it does take a little getting used to. Isn't this great, this hybrid world? So that miracles do happen. I have learned how to set up the owl occasionally without running upstairs to say, Chris, help. I hope that's a sign that, I'm at the early. The brain is still working. At least the owl is working. So, and Julie is originally a nurse, right?
No.
Just, okay. An administrator,
Yes,
a gerontologist,
sort of.
sort of gerontologist, but has amazing knowledge and compassion, particularly as it deals with how we can be a more welcoming congregation, and think also about how that affects ableism, how we're welcoming to people with dementia. So we're so grateful to have you here this morning, not only to sing in the choir, a gift you've shared with us often, but to share some of your other gifts as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Pastor. So I will fill in a little bit more of the gaps of my background. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a gerontologist, although I probably play one on TV. But my background is that I worked in skilled nursing care for about 31 years, mostly in the social service realm. So I was a social worker working on the floor with people with dementia and their family members. And at a point in my trajectory with that, I did become a nursing home administrator in 1990, and then worked in the administrative end of things, but always still very connected to the clients that we were serving in the skilled nursing community and the family members as well. And early on in my career in this field, I developed this very kind of peculiar, I suppose, affinity to working with people with dementia. And I don't necessarily know why that is. Only to say that I felt at the time, being 25, 26 years old, that these are people that are very much misunderstood, that we didn't really know much about how to really do and provide good care for people with dementia. And I just kind of tuned into that and decided I'm going to just learn as much as I can about this very mysterious and confusing world of what a brain is like what's it like for a person to have a brain that is diseased with dementia. And so what I did was I just started immersing myself into education that was offered through the Rush Alzheimer's Disease Center. Did a lot of training and continuing education, and eventually earned the designation of certified dementia practitioner. So a lot of people will think by nature, that I'm a nurse, but I've not ever done bedside care or worked as a nurse or anything like that. But my passion is really in the area of trying to help senior care providers provide the best care that we know how with current science, current best practices for people with dementia. So in 2017, I left after 31 or so years, left the operations side, and I now work for a company called HUK Training Institute. And what we do is we write training curriculum, and we take those programs into nursing homes, and we train nursing home staff. So I've been able to take my years of experience and now funnel it into training and education. So whenever I get a chance to do something like this, I love it because it's really in my wheelhouse. It's what I like to do, is help people, better understand what it's like to live with dementia. So that's my background. And what I did for those of you who got here early is I asked you to start with a craft project and gave you a picture of a brain on paper. And I don't have any more copies of it. So we're going to get to that brain in just a minute. Okay. And I'm I'm gonna ask you all to share your brains. But we'll do that in just a moment. So I want to start, I'm gonna pass these handouts. There's 15 of them. So if you're a couple, if you could go, just share them. I'll give you a moment just to kind of pass those around. Give me a couple of those out. Bring them over to the folks over here. Thanks.
Do you want me to make some more copies, Julie?
You kind of like.
And if people at home would like the handouts, we could have some here.
Sure,
For
yeah.
them to pick up.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure you could hear me.
I've got a couple more handouts. Do we need any more out there?
Okay, maybe
great.
we're okay. But we'll
All
make
right.
some more to keep upstairs. for folks.
So what I thought we might start with is a little bit of demystifying dementia and maybe kind of busting into what some misconceptions are. Basically what dementia isn't. So I'm going to start with a true false questionnaire. Just shout it out. Dementia is a mental illness, true or false? True. So we've got a true over here. We've got some false over here. If you flip up, and everything that I'm showing you here, you have in your packet. Okay, the answer to that is false. Dementia is not a mental illness. When we think about mental illness, we think about depression, schizophrenia, dementia is not a mental illness. Now, dementia can involve signs and symptoms of mental illness, but it is not diagnosed as a mental illness and it's not treated as a mental illness. So that's the first myth we want to dispel. And sadly, when I started working in the industry, we kind of thought about dementia as a mental illness. They're crazy. They've got to be locked in that unit over there because they're nuts. And that is how we really thought about them. And so we would treat them as such, and we would medicate them as such. But we've learned over the years that it's not, that's not the best way to care for people with dementia. Second, true, false question. Dementia is a disease.
True.
Well, surprisingly, it's false. Dementia is a symptom of a disease. So what you have here is a dementia umbrella. And I don't know if I can show this in a way that the folks.
You
at
could,
home-
if you go to the owl, I
Yeah.
think, or if you pass it to me, I'll try and put it on the owl
Okay,
and
that
see.
would be good.
I'll be your helper. I
Okay.
don't know if it'll work. We're trying.
So dementia is
not.
actually a symptom of a disease process. And the disease is.
Oh, Forget it. We'll have these for everybody at home. We will have them. You can pick one up. We'll just leave it there.
So there are irreversible forms of dementia, irreversible problems that can replicate dementia. Things like depression. Somebody with depression can have slower mental functioning, and they can maybe have emotional problems that kind of appear to be dementia-like, but when treated, when the depression is treated, the dementia-like symptoms go away. Sometimes infections, like urinary tract infections, can create a situation where somebody has some cognitive problems. They get a little bit delirium, a little bit of delirium. Sometimes medications and drugs can create, can mimic some symptoms of depression, of dementia. But for today, we're really talking about irreversible dementia. And dementia that is a symptom of a disease process, such as Alzheimer's disease, which is the most common disease that creates the symptom of dementia. There's other kinds of dementia, though, as well. There's vascular dementia, which is created from a series of heart-related problems, multi-infarct dementia. There's frontal temporal dementia. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Parkinson's disease can also have accompanying with it symptoms of dementia. All of those things are irreversible. So there is no way to treat those diseases in a way that's going to stop the decline. And dementia is a symptom of all of those that will come with any one of those permanent disease issues. Third question, dementia only affects memory.
Oh, no.
Right, that's false. She knows what we're talking about here. And I do want this to be really interactive. So, you know, absolutely chime in. Dementia affects all brain functions. And you have the umbrella there now that shows the little drops of rain of all the different areas that dementia affects. It's not just memory. And a lot of times when we think about dementia, we just think about it, they forget. It's just about memory loss. Well, it is so much more than that. Judgment is affected. Things like not realizing that it's 20 degrees outside and not knowing that you need to put your coat on to go outside. Behavior, things like wandering and anger and agitation, and the person might respond in ways that are really unlike how they used to be as a person. So dementia affects behavior, language is affected. So the words coming in don't make sense. And often the words coming out may not make sense either. Of course, memory. Talked just a moment ago with a gentleman who asked a question about is short-term memory loss kind of a precursor to having more full-blown dementia? And it can be, because the thing about memory loss is that is really typically the first part of the memory in your brain to go is the short-term memory. It's what did you have for breakfast this morning? It's, you know, what did you do last night? What TV show did you watch? Those things can be like Teflon and just not stick in the brain. But it's fascinating to know that people who don't remember what they had for breakfast this morning, they can remember their phone number from the house that they grew up in, or they can remember their second grade teacher's name. You know, really interesting part of the reality of the brain. Personality can change. You know, I remember so many family members saying, she talks like a truck driver, and my mother never would have done that. You know, sometimes someone who's nasty can become very sweet, and people who are very sweet can go, you know, go the other way. It's kind of fascinating. To already mention communication, mood swings are common. Problem solving. When you think about a simple task like brushing your teeth, you know, there's steps involved with that. You have to find your toothbrush, you have to get your toothpaste, unscrew it, put the toothpaste on your toothbrush, run it under a little water, you know, simple tasks that we just do because they're so ingrained and we do them. You will find somebody with dementia will look at that toothbrush and maybe they'll recognize it, but not really sure what this is for. And I have seen people who will take the toothbrush and do this on the mirror because they're looking at themselves in the mirror and they will do this. They forget what is supposed to happen with this toothbrush. So problem solving, even simplest things, let alone balancing a checkbook and those kinds of things, become increasingly difficult. And then there's a lot of sensory changes that happen with dementia. This is one of the training programs that Educate Training Institute created years ago. It's called Dementia Live. And what we do for people, for learners, is that we replicate the sensory loss that happens with people. We have the I should have brought them, didn't think about it, but the specially made glasses that limit peripheral vision. Because what happens as dementia progresses is somebody's vision, the person's vision they lose their peripheral vision. So they begin to really try to make sense of their world through a pinhole of awareness. We call it in the business, their bubble of awareness. So when you as a caregiver are speaking to somebody that's living with dementia, if you're doing that from behind them or from beside them, they're not going to know, they're not going to tune into you. So we always teach caregivers, you have to get into their bubble of awareness and get their eye contact so that they know that there's another human being there. So vision loss, that peripheral vision loss, mentioned before, the comprehension. So hearing is affected. A lot of times people living with dementia will say, I couldn't hear what you said. What they're really saying is, I can't understand what you're saying to me. Because, with a normal functioning brain, we make sense of our world through our senses, what we see and smell and hear. It all comes together and creates a story of what's happening right now and what happened an hour ago. When all that sensory input is impaired, you simply cannot make sense of your world. And this is what, in our training, what we try to instill in the caregivers is, wow, what must it be like to live life like that? To not be able to make sense of words coming at you and sounds that you hear and things that you see because you're only seeing life this way. So it affects every part of your brain function. So that brings me to our artwork. I want you to just hold up your brain and I want to see how you all divided it into thirds. You all almost did the same thirds. But we chose different colors. Let's see, well, the married couple, they've got their brain divided in thirds pretty well. Let's see. You all did like the, okay, Dan, stand up and let's see yours.
Look at the other's paper.
Okay, yeah. So Dan kind of, he really focused in on the brainstem.
Oh, excellent.
Right.
Yeah, you said even thirds.
I don't, did I say even thirds? I think I just said divided into thirds. Okay. Looks like most everybody kind of did the, 1, 2, 3.
I wasn't sure what was considered, if it was this was all
Right.
considered the brain,
Right.
like this little part. I asked
Right.
him, is this part of the brain?
Right.
He's like, no, that's the optic nerve.
That's the optic. Yeah, that little squiggly thing is the optic. The point of this exercise is that the challenge with dementia is that nobody's brain looks the same with dementia. So it's really challenging. Thanks, Dan. I think you're good. Thanks. It's really challenging to put everybody with dementia in the same bucket because it's going to progress differently. It's going to affect one part of the brain, maybe more pronounced than another part of the brain. Maybe personality doesn't change in one person, but it does crazy things in another person, in terms of their personality. So just as you all picked different colors for your brains, and you, in some cases, divided the brain into different quadrants, that's just a visual representation of how hard it is to say every single person with dementia is going to be like this. And when you think of it, let's just, an analogy would be diabetes. When we think about the disease of diabetes, we kind of know what that means. It means you've got to watch what you eat. You should probably exercise, you should take your blood sugar readings, and you should take your insulin if it's prescribed. It's pretty straightforward stuff. Diabetes in one person is gonna be kind of similar to diabetes in another person. That is not the case with somebody with dementia. So it does make it for a very challenging situation for caregivers, whether you're a professional caregiver or you are a family caregiver of somebody with dementia. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I'm in a support group,
Yeah.
and everybody in that support group has a different
Story,
story.
different
And
situation.
how things are happening. I also would add that dementia affects the joints, because now he can't bend his knees.
Yes.
And a lot of them, I have everybody in my group except one, me, they're in hospice. So they can't move their bodies, they can't help you at all. And that gets worse and worse as it goes along. But everybody is coming at it from a different angle.
Yeah, and one of the things, thank you for sharing that. And one of the things that I haven't talked about yet is dementia. The symptom of dementia is oftentimes on top of normal aging kinds of things, like joint deterioration and, loss of muscle mass, things that are kind of normal part of aging. So you're layering it on top. You could have that peripheral vision loss on top of cataracts or macular degeneration, things that just kind of happen as a part of the normal aging curve. So dementia, without a doubt, complicates life greatly. Okay, dementia is curable, true or false? Correct. Dementia is a progressive and irreversible loss of the capacity to think and remember.
Is that the definition
It is,
of dementia? Okay.
yes. And I think that is from the Alzheimer's Association. Everything that I'm giving to you is it's not me. It's, from valid resources like the National Institute on Health or Alzheimer's Association. Dementia is not curable, sadly. And one of the challenges that we have is that a lot of times when these symptoms come up, short-term memory loss or forgetting that you're a part of a committee of church or something. Often those things are kind of dismissed. Like, we don't really want to acknowledge it. And we also, if it's happening to us, we kind of want to hide it. If there's a spouse situation, a lot of times the spouse just naturally steps in and kind of compensates. And so consequently, without early intervention, generally people with dementia are kind of living with it, oftentimes 2 to 3, even longer years, before it's widely known or accepted that, hey, this person has a progressive problem. A lot of times we write it off as just, well, she's just old, old people forget. We're going to talk about that in just a second too, because I know that's always a big question. And one other thing, and then I'll get to you, Cheryl, is, you have to be careful when you hear the pharmaceutical companies doing all of their rah-rah about, oh, we've got this new drug and it's going to be awesome. Well, what has happened with those drugs is, first of all, what happens is that it does sort of instill this sense of false hope that we're going to be able to cure this with this pill, and that person's going to take the pill and erase the loss, and they're going to go back to who they were. The problem, what's happened with the clinical trials on a lot of these medications is that they get through maybe the first phase, then they get to the second phase, and it fails, because it really doesn't. The only thing that right now is scientifically proven to help is a medication at the very beginning stages, very beginning identification of cognitive loss. And that can help slow the progression a little bit, but it does not reverse it and it doesn't cure it. Cheryl?
Well, that was gonna be my question as to the medications that are out there, excluding this latest one, which
Yeah.
my niece is, works as a researcher for a pharmaceutical company.
Oh.
She had said to us
Interesting.
that the whole research community is very much against that drug because it was not properly tested before the FDA approved it.
Yeah,
But outside of that, the drugs that have been around longer, it's my understanding that they buy maybe 1 or 2 years of delay.
yes, I
And
would
they're
agree
very
with that.
expensive.
They're very expensive. And this latest one that was in clinical trials, if every person over the age of 65 on Medicare took this drug, we would bankrupt the Medicare system. So it is majorly expensive. And it's simply not practical. And it's exactly what you said. Early detection with Namenda is another one. And oh my goodness.
I took them, I mean, Wes took them.
Is it like Andy-Tols?
Oh, I'll think of them. I'll think of them as we go along here.
They're on TV all the time.
There, oh, yes, Namenda, okay, I'll think of it. Okay, so another true false. Dementia is a normal part of aging. Correct. False. Dementia is not a normal part of aging, okay? So a lot of people I will talk with, they'll say, oh my gosh, I forgot where I put my car keys. Does that mean I have dementia? No. So normal aging, you're going to have mild forgetfulness. I have mild forgetfulness every day, multiple times a day. So things like missing a monthly bill payment. Oh, I forgot to pay that Comcast. That's why I have auto pay on all my bills, because I'm not gonna remember. This actually happened to me over the summer. I woke up on a Friday and I thought it was Saturday. And I didn't realize it until like noon. And I said to my husband, I have gone through this entire morning thinking it was Saturday. Okay, word finding delays, very common. I remember back in my 20s, I worked in a nursing home that had 250 residents, 250 people living there. I could walk down the aisle and every person's name right off the top of my head, no problem. I can't remember half of your names in this room right now, I'm kidding. But names for me just don't stick anymore like they used to. I really have to work hard. If I meet a new person, I have to work really hard to find some kind of association that I will remember their name. Is that common for all of you too?
Yeah.
Yeah. You've noticed that change in yourself?
The names are horrible.
Names are horrible. I don't know why that is.
Russ and I were just talking about it upstairs.
And see, when I was looking at you, I couldn't remember your husband's
Right.
name. I know him, but I couldn't remember.
I know, it's terrible.
It's kind of embarrassing. And we moved into a new neighborhood last year. And so when you walk your dog, you meet all the other dog walking people. I can remember their dog's name. But I can't remember their name. And it's, right? It's so okay, misplacing something. Everybody misplaces things. You eventually probably find those things. That's normal. Forgetting to, what's that? Oh, after you bought the replacement. Of course, of course. Forgetting to attend a meeting. I forgot Exaltation had rehearsal last Saturday. Completely blew it off. So those things are normal. On the other side, though, are things that would not be considered normal. Okay, you miss a bill payment, that's one thing, but not realizing that you even have bills to pay, that becomes a problematic situation. When you lose track of the month or the time of year, if I wake up and I think it's June and it's March, you know, that, and I think that, and I think it's 1960, that's a problem. Repeatedly using incorrect words. So not being able to form sentences and use words that are part of kind of normal everyday language. Unable to use critical thinking to track down a lost item. So the difference is you might lose something, but then you have that critical thinking ability to say, all right, when was the last time I used that checkbook? Okay, maybe it's there. And you can kind of use some critical thinking to track it down eventually. People with dementia cannot do that. They can't use that critical thinking and not find those ways that we do to find things. And then, like, if I didn't even remember that I was in Exultation Singers, that's a problem. But forgetting a rehearsal is, okay, that happens. So those are just some like quick sort of think about, like, when you stop and you say to yourself, oh my gosh, does this mean I have dementia? Just ask yourself those things.
Julie, I had heard that, working crossword puzzles and different things like that is helpful, but then I recently heard that no, all those mind games really don't make a difference, which is.
Oh, who knows? I mean, it's good to exercise all parts of your body, your mind, your muscles, everything. There's nothing wrong with that. But it is very true that nobody is immune at all to having dementia. It doesn't depend on your income, on your race, on your ethnicity, on your sexual orientation. Absolutely, there is nothing that is a sure thing.
It's like that commercial where they say shingles doesn't care.
What was that?
That commercial that says shingles doesn't care.
Right, yeah, dementia doesn't
Dementia
care.
doesn't care.
Yeah,
Do they have evidence of what causes it yet or not? They don't.
Well,
for
they
sure.
know
There's
what
a lot
the
of theories.
brain looks like. They know that on brain autopsies, there's plaques, there's tangles, there's a shrinking of the brain. It essentially kind of dries up. It becomes very, what's the word I'm looking for? The plasticity of the brain, it loses. So,
Are you saying it's common amongst all with dementia, these same
Yes.
symptoms? of
Yes.
the brain?
yes, but interesting, research has come out that they have actually done brain autopsies on people with Alzheimer's disease, and they don't see any plaques or tangles. So the reality is that we really 100% don't understand why that person over there ends up with Alzheimer's disease and this one doesn't. But one thing is for sure, if you get Alzheimer's disease, you will have dementia. That is a certainty. Nobody has Alzheimer's without the symptoms of dementia.
But the reverse is not true.
The reverse is not true. That's correct.
Do you think there's going to be an impact now that we have long COVID, that they're going to do that much more research? Because there's going to be that much more of a financial impact to the healthcare system?
I don't know the answer to that. What I do know, and what we're gonna get there in just a second, so let me ask you this question. Dementia is only found in the elderly. False, that is correct. So there's some graphs on the back. About 5 to 6, research is about 5 to 6% of people with Alzheimer's develop symptoms before the age of 65. So I believe that the youngest person known to have Alzheimer's is in their 30s. And there's more stories coming out about early onset Alzheimer's, people in their 50s, even in their 40s. There's documentaries about that. So younger, it is not prevalent. It is possible in younger years.
Is it becoming more prevalent in younger?
I
people,
don't
or-
know if
Okay.
it's becoming more prevalent or if we are just more aware
Right, okay.
and that we're not looking at it as a mental illness, but where this is truly more of a cognitive problem. So projections are, and these numbers are, you can look at different sources for this, but currently approximately 6.5 million people are living with Alzheimer's. And that's projected to be 13 million by 2060. Now, the reason for that is that we are living longer as human beings. Our life expectancy has dramatically increased in this century. Even from the early 1900s, our life expectancy has grown. And on top of it, you know, we've got all these baby boomers now. I'm at the young end of the baby boomer spectrum, so I still have a little ways to go. But this boomer population, I mean, is this massive number of people. 10,000 boomers turn 65 every day. So we've got problems on our Medicare, you know, the stress in our Medicare system and everything. But there's going to be a lot of people living their lives every single day with symptoms of dementia.
How long do people typically live with dementia?
Approximately 10 years.
So
from the-
onset to.
That's an average life expectancy for somebody with Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's, it's about 85% of people with symptoms of dementia is because of Alzheimer's disease. So that's why that's the most prevalent one that people talk about, is it is the most common as compared to Parkinson's or multi-impact dementia or frontal tempora. So dementia is not only found in the elderly. All right, so this is where we get now to kind of what Pastor Melissa's message was. I wanted to just set the kind of the playing field for what dementia is, what it isn't, and true or false, dementia is hopeless. True or false?
False, but it seems like it.
It certainly can be and is hopeless for a lot of people. But I maintain there is always hope. We cannot think of this as hopeless. It will feel hopeless. There will be moments that it is hopeless, but there is hope. And the reason there is hope is that there is still a person behind the symptom, behind the person with dementia. And what I gave you here is what we subscribe to in the industry as the indicators of well-being that's needed for people living with dementia. And this is based on research done by Dr. Thomas Kitwood. He's a psychologist in England, and he, I think he passed away in the 1990s. But this is what we subscribe to, and this is the tenet of the training that I do with caregiving staff. It's the person before the disease. The personhood of somebody living with dementia is still there. It's just hard to access unless we make a concerted effort to do so. So things like creating an environment of comfort that speaks so much to this dementia-friendly initiative, and I'll talk about that in just a minute, but I think we're kind of coming up on time too, aren't we? 11:30.
We have about, well, we could go to 11:45 and then I think the owl goes to sleep.
Yeah,
Not really, but.
the owl goes to sleep. How do we create an environment of comfort? How do we create that environment of safety and comfort? Identity. The problem that we have in the healthcare field is that we look at this person and we say, oh, she has dementia. She's not going to remember anything anyway. And doesn't matter what we do or say. She's just kind of there.
Oh.
Yeah, and we are trying to turn that around to saying, this is Jim. Jim is a former pilot for American Airlines, a wonderful singer. He has a beautiful voice. Let's tap into that. Am I making you cry?
No, we're just visiting Susan's mom and we've set her down at the piano. And she was
Yes, beautiful, beautiful.
pumping out tunes.
Absolutely. There are some amazing YouTube videos out there of what some really spectacular care community organizations are doing to tap into the personhood of the person living with dementia. There's one out there of a former ballerina, and when you look at her, you think, okay, there's nobody there, but there is. Because the part of the brain that is the most, I don't want to say, I don't want to say resistant, but where dementia moves slower is in the amygdala. And the amygdala is where feelings are housed. So people with dementia can feel things. They can feel love, they can feel attachment, and they can feel connected. They can feel purposeful. They can feel safe. Or they can feel scared and frightened and unimportant and unloved. So what do we want for these people that are living with dementia? Do we want them to feel that way? Or do we want them to feel this way? And if we want them to feel this way, this is what we have to tune into. This is kind of the roadmap. It's their identity. Who do they identify as in their personhood? You know, if this person was a full-time homemaker, then maybe something she's going to really identify with is giving her a big basket of baby clothes and letting her sort those things. That's purposeful for her. It's not childish. It's a task that she can tune into. Occupation, kind of the same thing. Occupation is, what do I do in my life that gives me purpose? Why did I wake up every morning and do XYZ? Doesn't necessarily mean a job. It can be. I love to tell this story. There was a gentleman at the nursing facility where I worked. He was a physician, okay? And he had Alzheimer's disease. And he would just get really, anxious and unsettled, and gosh, we didn't really know what to do for him. So somebody, I don't think it was me, but maybe it was, went up to the medical records office and all the old medical records, and we brought down a stack of charts. And they were the hard copy charts, that he was used to. And we said, would you do a chart review for us? And he sat there with his pen, flipping through those pages, making little marks, and that was what he could tune into doing. And he felt successful, his personhood was tapped into, and he was in a good space. Inclusion. People living with dementia have to feel that they're a part of a larger community, that they're not just isolated away from the world. Sadly, that is what we've done for such a long time, is we lock them away in that unit over there. Unfortunately, the United States is we are not leaders when it comes to dementia-friendly communities. We're starting there. We're starting to talk more about it. But Denmark has created this entire dementia village, and a village for people to move into with nice apartments. They can walk out. There's a little grocery store over here. There's a little cafe over here. There's a little movie theater, and they can live in this community safely and among others. And it's wonderful. So we have, let me finish with this, and then attachment. It's that people with dementia need to feel like they have relationships. And sadly, what also happens is that when somebody starts to develop dementia, and we as the observers of that don't know how to really relate to that person anymore. It's hard when you think, well, I could go visit her, but she's probably not going to remember that I was there anyway. So what's the point? we do that. We tend not, I mean, don't mean we, but I just mean kind of collectively, we tend to pull away from people that we don't understand. And that is one of the tenets of the training that we do is it's hard to care for somebody that you don't understand. So the more we can go into these care communities and help the staff really understand and feel for themselves what it's like to live with dementia, then we can begin to maybe transform how we are providing care. So this is the roadmap right here. And so as we perhaps start to move into a direction as a congregation about do we want to be that congregation that has recognized the need and patterned some of the worship experiences for people with dementia in the larger community? This would be a way that a place that we could start to do that. And there are some communities around us like Elgin and Barrington. I've been asked to become a part of the dementia friendly Barrington outreach. Let's see, Glencoe, Hyde Park, areas of, in Chicago, they're starting a community initiative to create dementia opportunities for people living in the community with dementia. So for example, a restaurant might be open only from 4 p.m. till 6 p.m. and specifically for people with dementia, and the servers are trained. There's an area of the restaurant that is kind of, this is for people to come together and be together. It's that attachment. But if we show somebody with dementia a menu that has 50 things on it, they're not going to be able to tune into that. So the menus are condensed. I wish I would have also thought to bring one of the books that we have. One of our programs is called Reading to Connect, and it's a reading program specifically designed for people with dementia, with large print, large margins, nice engaging picture, and few words. And people with dementia can read. I didn't believe it myself. They can read. Reading is a long-term memory. So how could we take some of our worship materials and recraft them? So there's a lot that can be done to make FUMCA a dementia-friendly congregation. But today, the real point of today was to just answer questions and kind of dispel some of the what is dementia, what isn't dementia. So that's what I had for you today. Yeah.
So my father had Alzheimer's and it was fairly early on, so it was before he was 65, but not like
Wow.
40 or anything. How, so every time I forget where something is, I think, oh God, I have it, or I can't find a word. How, do they know how genetically linked Alzheimer's is? Is there any research? I'm sure there's research on that, but I didn't know if they had any.
I don't know the answer to that. What I do know is that it's not certain that if your dad had it, you're going to get it.
No.
Huntington's disease is like that. Your father has Huntington's or mother, you have a 50-50 chance. There is nothing hard and fast about the genetic connection. I think what the researchers say is there may be a predisposition, but there's no hard line with that.
Jean Wood has a question.
Oh, hi, Jean.
Hi, you don't want to see what I look like. I spent 23 hours in the air up and down yesterday from Ireland. So anyway, that's why you can't see my face. My husband had Parkinson's with dementia. And I wanted to say how thrilled I am by FUMCA because I had a wheelchair van that was a little problematic because we didn't have our current canopy. But when Barry would come into the worship service, he just felt very much at home. People greeted him. The last visit he made to church was for someone who was leaving to move near her, having her 90th birthday, moving to the West Coast. Can't remember her name, of course. Anyway, people came up to him and were on his eye level. And I remember Bob Robertson saying, Charlie Brown, how you doing today? Because he related to Barry in that way that he knew that he was special. And music was always a part of his life. And I think that music is critical for people with memory problems, whether it's music of their era or whatever. But I think that we can try to be open as possible as a congregation to meet the needs of people. And I just wanted to thank this congregation for helping with my husband.
That's nice. Yeah.
One question. So like Jim was saying that his mother-in-law could sit down at the piano and play, and there's people I think that could sing or dance, whatever. Is that sort of like kind of no matter what you were into, you can sort of still do them, or not necessarily like if you could do crossword puzzles, but now that you have dementia, like maybe you're not gonna be able to do crossword puzzles still. Does it just depend on the activity? Like,
Well, you might be able to still do crossword puzzles if that puzzle is adapted
okay,
to your skill ability or to your capabilities.
okay,
So that's part of our challenge as caregivers, is to adapt what that person used to do
okay.
to a degree that the person can still handle it. So a big New York Times crossword puzzle, probably not, but a crossword puzzle that has maybe only 3 or 4, fill in the blanks, if that's possible. And the other challenging thing too, you probably will echo this, is that, what works one day might not work well the next day. That's the other problem. It's just that you're constantly trying to figure it out, right? So support groups, that's very important. Yeah.
I remember visiting my aunt, who had no idea who I was, but she was so glad to see me.
Yeah, yeah. Kindness, smiling faces means so much. And she probably tuned into you as somebody very important to her.
Right.
Yeah. Cheryl.
With there being at least 3 facilities in Arlington Heights that deal with memory impaired individuals, is there any plan for us, rather than obviously dealing with people that are here that are progressing, having any kind of outreach to those facilities or the memory care units, so that we could, share time and share interest with them, that there'd be an appreciation.
Well, yeah, certainly a possibility. I think there's a lot of possibility.
Are there any facilities that you feel embody what you're speaking of here more so than others? Because my mom had Alzheimer's or whatever. You can't ever say exactly what it is. It has to be autopsy, and we chose not to do that for her.
Yeah.
But a lot of times what we saw was so much dependent on who the director was.
Oh, yeah.
And when the director changed, the whole philosophy could change.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking for facilities that are usually part of a group, and where they, as a group, they embody these values.
We can talk offline on that too. Yeah. It changes constantly. Yeah, Larry?
I was gonna just ask if you've seen that Glenn Campbell
Yeah.
documentary on him still performing
Yes.
with the dementia. That was just amazing. As soon as he had that
Amazing.
guitar on, he was on stage performing, he could do it. As soon as he went off stage, his personality in that was just.
Absolutely. What,
Tony Bennett.
and Tony Bennett.
Tony
Did you guys
Bennett.
see the Lady Gaga, Tony Bennett? Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, it's amazing. And he did not, Tony Bennett and Glenn Campbell didn't even remember that they had done that. Imagine that, being in like wherever they were performing and having no memory that he was on stage performing these wonderful songs for thousands of people. That's just mind blowing, pardon the pun, but yeah, but that shows you how those deep embedded long-term memories are still there. They are there. We have to just learn how to pull them out of people. It's not easy.
I had a close friend that developed first dementia, and I think Alzheimer's, only in her 50s. And
Yeah.
we didn't see each other very often. But I went to visit, and her husband took care of her at home. But at any rate, her doctor said something that really struck me, because I felt it when I was with her. She had no idea who I was. when I went to see her. It'd only been a couple of years, but her situation went downhill very quickly, very surprisingly. And so I got to speak with her doctor a little bit, and he said, well, you'll notice that what made Patty herself is still there. You're gonna feel her personality. I mean, she was a very person, and that's usually true. You know, it's not as if the whole person is gone.
Right.
A lot of them is gone, but something that's a core is there. And that was so encouraging to me because I was terribly upset about this at the time, because she was my mentor in teaching.
Yes.
And she was only 10 years older than I. And so I was in my 40s when she turned up with us, and we weren't together because she had lived in Michigan, moved to Michigan. And so, you know, it was just, it was the first time I'd ever come in contact with someone that young.
Yeah.
But just as a word of encouragement, I think that is true. Because now I've lived a lot longer than that. And I have seen that in people that, you know, if they were warm and welcoming and they liked to entertain, there's still something of that there. If they were curmudgeons, they didn't care about being with people. That's still there too. But, you know, it's, you know, it's still encouraging. And the other thing I wanted to ask you something. I know you were saying the medications really are not proven, and you know, there's a lot of kind of false hope. But for Parkinson's, I've been told, whatever it is that people are putting people on for Parkinson's does seem to be slowing the progress to the point where people live, you know, 10 or 15 extra years. And it used to be with Parkinson's, it was pretty fast.
Yeah.
So is that true?
Yes, Parkinson's, there's been a lot more, I don't want to say focus on it, but there's a lot more success with, look at Michael J. Fox, and he's lived with it for such a long time, yeah. But really good comments about tapping into the personhood. That's really what it's about, yeah, sure.
Speaking of that, just like we fill out a will or whatever, should we almost fill out this questionnaire and just have it available? Because no one will know us as well as we know ourselves.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, and that is, I forget what they call that, but there is it's your advanced directives. When I get dementia, this is what I want you to know about me. Always have a bowl of M&Ms within my arm's reach. Have Elton John music playing all the time. So yeah, those are, and there is a lot of that coming forward as well. Is that there's something else I was thinking, something, I can't remember what it was. Well, anyway.
Roger, did you have something?
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment. You were talking about early onset. There's a clinical trial going on now called AHEAD, AHEAD. To be a participant, you have to be over the age of 55 and have a parent who has Alzheimer's. So they're trying to find out much earlier when these things could be occurring. And I think if you go online, you can find a place that has it. I know that Rush has it. And for you who have offspring who are living out of the area, there's testing all over Virginia, Indianapolis. So it might be something you want to look into.
Thanks you, Roger.
Okay.
No, is it a long-term one, like over decades?
Probably it's a long,
They're not really getting that-
longitudinal study, yeah.
A cure, just to see how it works.
Is it just tracking or is it also trial medication?
I think what it is, if I'm not mistaken, is based on the research that Rush has done about the healthy brain.
We had someone, we did a morning session.
Yes.
And someone came out, and I know Jean is participating in that. I see her hand up, so maybe that's where she's headed.
Yeah.
But Rush has an excellent longitudinal.
Yes.
It's not, about things that one can do to minimize your risk. One of them was don't eat cheese.
Right. I think of that every time I grab a piece of cheddar. She said don't eat cheese.
Well, and there was a woman that participated in the study, very actively, was adapting her lifestyle.
And she warned all the researchers that if she got to heaven and found out that she could have had cheese, they were in trouble.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
A
So
lifetime of haunting.
Susan Frick, that's who it was.
Right.
Again, the name, I've known Susan Frick for 25 years and I couldn't think
She
of her
was,
name, but
it was
she's
very good. Well, I
really
think
good.
Jean,
Yeah,
maybe
Jean.
that was what Jean wanted to
Yeah.
comment on.
Yeah, Barry was involved in a study, the longitudinal study, in addition to Rush. This was one over on the North Shore. They're trying to find biological markers because he had Parkinson's with dementia. And then they enrolled my son, Chris, who lives here, to also, and he still, even though Barry has passed away, they still have him go over on occasion and get it tested. But the one thing they found out is that Barry did not have Alzheimer's, but that Chris does not have a marker for Alzheimer's. And that's a new thing. So he knows he doesn't have to worry about having Alzheimer's.
Really?
Yep.
Marker for Alzheimer's.
But Barry had Parkinson's.
He had Parkinson's with dementia. They haven't detected yet about the causes for Parkinson's. I mean, it's a conundrum because there's environment and heredity. So Chris is involved in that study, but he found out in the process he doesn't have a marker for getting Alzheimer's. That's a new blood thing.
Wow. Is it a genetic marker, Jean?
Is it a genetic marker?
It's a blood marker. Now this is with the North Shore group. So, yeah.
Do you want to know?
I know.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I do.
I know.
Because until there's something they can do about it.
Well, if you get medication early.
Well, that's true.
So
That's
maybe you
true.
don't want to know when you're 30, but maybe you want to know, I mean, it's individual,
Well,
right?
would you live your life differently if you knew?
It identifies the presence of amyloid plaques in the brain.
Amyloid plaques, yeah. It's those plaques and tangles that form in the brain. And so they have a way to detect if those are through the blood, if they're starting to form or something. Wow.
Julie, maybe you can come back again.
Yeah.
Because I think
Yeah.
we have more questions and more discussion that
Sure.
we would.
Love to.
Is
Yeah.
there any recommended reading you have? Any recommended reading?
There's a really good book. I just read this a couple months ago. Tia Powell, Powell. That's what I meant to, when one of you mentioned the put your life plan together. Tia Powell, it's called Dementia Reimagined. And that is, and she's a physician who had no clue about dementia until her mother developed dementia. And she's created this whole new way to approach and look at it. We also at Educate, we do webinars every other month. And we had some speakers come and the title of it was The Joy of Dementia. That's not provocative.
There you go.
So there is more, there's kind of more of this of, hey, it's crummy, but let's make the best of it. Let's try to promote quality of life and hope.
I know we're out of time, but I saw that with my dad in some ways. My dad was fairly, he was pretty reserved. And with dementia, I still remember, took him to a movie and then we went out to a restaurant and he didn't know who he didn't know in the restaurant. So he greeted every single person we walked by.
Yeah.
He stopped and say, well, hello. I have Alzheimer's or I have dementia, so I don't know if I know you. It was very sweet. I've not seen my dad like that. And then he had some real fear too. That was really hard. But there were also moments when my sister and I would tell him stories about himself that he had forgotten.
Yeah.
And he just would get this tickled look on his face, like, really, I did that? Yeah, Dad, you did. And it was really sweet to see himself through our eyes.
Oh,
and
what a
so there was
joy.
some real, and then there were things like he also was someone who he would only eat for ice cream. He'd only eat vanilla, chocolate chip, butter pecan, or mint chocolate chip if he was really feeling racy. Like that was with dementia, he forgot what he didn't like. And he started eating at the care facility where he lived. They would give him, butter pecan or rocky road or fudge almond prickle, you know, the stuff that I would eat at home, and he would look when I was growing up and he'd say, oh, that's disgusting. And so he started eating, he forgot he didn't like it. And so my father, who'd always been really fit, kind of got this little, you know, spare time. And he wasn't, I mean, he wasn't nearly as active in the care center either, so, but like that was a fun, I mean, there was joy there for us.
There can be moments.
There were moments, yeah, there were some moments.
Yeah. That's great.
Last question.
Not a question, it's a statement. One of the things, well, what I do with Wes, I usually go for like 2 hours at a time, and being a teacher, that's what the way I approach it. So I bring all kinds of things to work. I know it's like you're stimulating, you want them to learn, but after a while you just play the game their way, or and like we play bingo by, he has chips, and I'll ask him what the number is, and he puts it on the number. But one day I took a little ball, and we were rolling it back and forth. And then we started batting it back and forth. And then he would bat it, so I'd have to chase it. And by the end, he was laughing out loud. Yeah. Because he couldn't chase it because he was in the chair. So whatever I do, I work to make a connection. I don't care how. I don't care how we play the game. I don't care what we do, but I find it, like I took a book of, visual is very big. I took a calendar of lighthouses, and we went through looking at the lighthouses. And then what I can do for me, is I can say, we went to Point Betsy. Do you remember? We drove that this really long, so that I bring memories for myself to talk about with him, so that everything, I take 3 or 4 things every time I go. And that helps me to make a connection. And in him, I think it does too, but what I want is to make that connection, that he doesn't know who I am, but he knows. He recognizes.
You're somebody important and special.
And that's what his mother did too. She used to hate me, but as soon as she went in, she thought I was nice. She knew she liked me. So yeah.
That would be the joy.
Yeah. Joy part.
My mother-in-law had progressive Alzheimer's, and at the very end, she went to visit her, and she said, I don't remember your name, but I know you're someone I love.
Yes.
I was satisfied with that.
Yes. Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everybody.
Gotta get your trans back.
Yeah.